The Whitmore mansion in the prestigious Georgetown neighborhood glowed with lights through the twilight of an April evening. The sounds of piano music and the muffled voices of guests drifted from the open windows on the first floor. Amanda Pierce Whitmore stood in front of the mirror in her bedroom on the second floor, examining her reflection. The exquisite Chanel dress fit her figure perfectly, and the diamond earrings, a gift from her husband on their anniversary, caught the light and scattered it into tiny sparkles. It had been 2 years since she became part of one of Washington's most influential families, but sometimes Amanda still felt like an actress playing someone else's role. Every charity event, every social gathering required her to play the role of Mrs. Whitmore flawlessly, as if one careless word could destroy the carefully constructed facade of her new life. "You look stunning." James Whitmore appeared in the bedroom doorway, tall and imposing in his impeccably tailored tuxedo. At 35, he was already vice president of Whitmore Investments, the family investment company with assets worth several $billion. "I'm sure your father doesn't think so," Amanda replied quietly, adjusting her earrings. "He just needs time to get used to it." James came up behind her and hugged her, meeting her gaze in the mirror. "He's old-fashioned, but he's not heartless." Amanda smiled softly, but a shadow flashed in her eyes. She knew that Richard Whitmore would never fully accept a daughter-in-law who had appeared out of nowhere and won his son's heart in 6 months. Their first meeting took place at a contemporary art gallery in downtown Washington. Amanda, who was working as an assistant curator at the time, was giving a tour to VIP guests. James, who had come to the exhibition in search of investment opportunities in the art world, was captivated not only by her knowledge, but also by the natural grace with which she moved among the exhibits. After the tour, he invited her for coffee. One meeting led to another, and then to a whirlwind romance that surprised them both with its intensity. For James, accustomed to calculating socialites, Amanda was a breath of fresh air. Intelligent, spontaneous, with a subtle sense of humor and a genuine interest in art and literature. For Amanda, her relationship with James was a chance for a new beginning, an opportunity to leave the dark pages of her past behind. In his eyes, she saw not who she had been, but who she could become. 6 months after they met, they were married in a small ceremony attended by close friends at the Whitmore estate on the Chesapeake Bay. The wedding was modest by Whitmore family standards, which caused the first wave of rumors among Washington society. "Mom asked if we would be joining them in Aspen next week," James said, interrupting Amanda's recollections. "Will your brother be there?" she asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. Michael, James's older brother and the official heir to the Whitmore empire, had made it clear from day one that he considered Amanda a gold digger. His cold politeness was sometimes worse than open hostility. "Michael will be busy with the merger with River Hill Capital," James replied. "So it will just be us, my parents, and maybe a couple of their old friends." Amanda nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and anxiety. Eleanor Whitmore, James's mother, was a complex woman, outwardly friendly, but with a sharp, observant mind and an impeccable sense of social hierarchy. She did not show open hostility toward Amanda, but she did not fully accept her either, keeping her at a polite distance. "We should be going downstairs," James said, glancing at his watch. "Father doesn't like people to be late, even if it's his own son." Richard Whitmore met them in the main hall, surrounded by a group of senators and high-ranking officials. At 68, he still had an imposing bearing and a piercing gaze that seemed to see right through his interlocutor. "Ah, here are the newlyweds," he said with a hint of irony, even though it had been 2 years since their wedding. "James, Senator Collins would like to discuss the situation on the technology stock market with you." Amanda felt James's hand tighten around her waist. Richard skillfully separated them at every family event, sending his son to discuss business with the right people and leaving her alone among the guests. "Go," she said quietly. "I'll find something to do." When James reluctantly walked away, Amanda headed for the bar, trying to ignore the stares following her. She knew that many of the guests were still wondering how she had managed to snag James Whitmore. A young woman without an impressive pedigree or significant wealth, with a resume that, upon closer inspection, was strangely incomplete. "Whiskey and soda, please," she asked the bartender, mentally preparing herself for an evening of social smiles and cautious conversation. "Amanda, dear, that dress is made for you." Eleanor Whitmore materialized beside her, elegant in an ivory dress and a string of pearls around her neck. "Thank you, Mrs. Whitmore," Amanda replied, accepting the compliment with gratitude but wariness. "Eleanor, please. We're family," the woman said, though her eyes remained appraising. "George Mitchell just asked about you. He mentioned that his daughter attended the same private school in Boston as you. What a coincidence." Amanda felt a chill run down her spine. "That must be a mistake. I went to a regular high school in Chicago." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "Really? How strange. I was sure you said Boston." "No," Amanda said firmly, trying to keep her voice calm. "I've never lived in Boston." Eleanor looked at her searchingly, then smiled slightly. "My memory sometimes fails me. I apologize." When her mother-in-law left, Amanda took a sip of whiskey, feeling the tension in her shoulders. This wasn't the first mistake Eleanor had made regarding Amanda's past. Sometimes she felt like James's mother was conducting her own investigation into Amanda's life, trying to find inconsistencies in the stories Amanda had told. From across the room, she noticed James looking for her among the guests and raised her hand to get his attention. His warm, sincere smile reminded her why she was here and why she was willing to endure his family's coldness. The evening continued in the usual rhythm of small talk and business discussions. Amanda diligently maintained conversations with the wives of politicians and businessmen, discussing charitable projects and the latest exhibitions. Over the past 2 years, she had learned to play her role convincingly enough that most of the guests did not notice how carefully she chose each word. But when she and James returned to their bedroom that evening, Amanda allowed herself to relax. She took off her earrings and put them in the box where she kept her few pieces of jewelry. Among them was a simple silver chain with a key-shaped pendant, the only thing she had kept from her former life. "What are you thinking about?" James asked, watching her from his chair. Amanda closed the box. "About how your mother tried again to catch me out on inconsistencies in my biography." James sighed. "She's just protecting the family. That's how she sees it." "From me?" Amanda turned to him. "What does she think I might do?" "Break my heart. Disgrace the Whitmore name. Who knows?" He shrugged, but in his eyes was a question he never asked directly. The question of who she was before she became Amanda Pierce, assistant curator of an art gallery. Amanda walked over to him and sat down next to him, taking his hands in hers. "James, you know everything that matters. I love you. I'm here for you, not for the money or the status." "I know," he kissed her palm, "and that's enough for me." But later, as she lay in the dark, listening to her husband's steady breathing, Amanda knew that wasn't enough for the Whitmore family. They would never stop searching. And if they found the truth about the years she had spent in New York under a different name, about the clients she had served as an elite escort, about the deals that sometimes bordered on the edge of the law, she closed her eyes, pushing those thoughts away. Her past was safely buried. No one from her former life knew where she was now. She had changed her name, her appearance, created a new story. She had become a different person. But deep down, in the quiet hours of the night, Amanda knew that the past never dies completely. It waits, patiently and ruthlessly, for the moment to return. Richard Whitmore walked into his office, closing the massive oak door behind him. Here, among the bookshelves and commemorative photographs with presidents and senators, he made his most important decisions. Today, one of those decisions was a conversation with the man sitting across from him. "Mr. Clark, I appreciate your punctuality," Richard said, sinking into the leather chair at his desk and looking intently at his guest. David Clark was a short, unremarkable-looking man of about 45. His unassuming suit and reserved manner allowed him to remain inconspicuous, a quality invaluable to a private investigator. "Time is money, Mr. Whitmore, especially yours," Clark replied, taking a folder out of his thin briefcase. Richard nodded. "What have you found out about my sister-in-law?" Clark opened the folder. "Let's start with the official version. Amanda Pierce, 29 years old. Born in Chicago, graduated from a community college in Illinois, then earned a bachelor's degree in art history from New York University. She worked at several galleries in New York, then moved to Washington 2.5 years ago. Here she got a job as an assistant curator at the Harrison Gallery." Richard tapped his fingers impatiently on the table. "I already know that. What about unofficially?" "Her biography starts to fall apart upon closer inspection." Clark turned the page. "The school in Chicago she claims to have graduated from has no record of a student with that name. There was indeed a student named Amanda Pierce at the college she lists, but the photo from the archives does not match your sister-in-law." Richard leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Is she using someone else's documents?" "Not exactly. It appears she has assumed the identity of the real Amanda Pierce, who died in a car accident 10 years ago. The girl's family moved away after the tragedy, and few people know about it. Using that identity is a smart move because a basic check won't reveal any discrepancies." "What about her time in New York?" Clark took out several photographs. "This is where it gets interesting. In New York, I found traces of a woman who looked like your sister-in-law, but under the name Natalie West. She worked for an elite escort agency called Diamond Key, which served high-profile clients." Richard took the photos. They showed a woman who undoubtedly resembled Amanda, but with dark hair and a different style, entering expensive hotels with different men. "Is there evidence that this is the same woman?" he asked, studying the photos closely. "A comparison of facial biometrics shows an 89% match. It's not absolute certainty, but it's close. In addition, Natalie West disappeared from New York around the same time Amanda Pierce appeared in Washington." Richard put the photos down, his face darkening with anger. "My son married a prostitute who stole someone else's identity. An escort is not technically the same thing as a prostitute," Clark pointed out. "The Diamond Key agency was an elite establishment where an hour of conversation cost thousands of dollars. Their girls were educated, knowledgeable about art and politics, and could hold a conversation on any topic." "I don't see the difference," Richard snapped. "She sold herself for money, and now she's sold herself to my son, only the price is higher." Clark shrugged. "There's something else. Natalie West had connections with several influential clients. One of them was Senator Edward Prescott." Richard flinched. Prescott was one of the most influential people in Washington and a longtime competitor of the Whitmores in a number of business ventures. "Do you think she could have been sent by him?" "I don't jump to conclusions without sufficient evidence," Clark replied, "but the coincidence is worth noting." Richard rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Continue the investigation. I want to know everything: her real name, her background, her connections, every dirty detail, and especially any contact with Prescott after her marriage." Clark nodded and gathered his papers. "Will I be reporting directly to you?" "Yes. My wife is aware of the situation, but my sons must not know anything, especially James." Richard stood up, signaling that the conversation was over. "He's blinded by that woman." Amanda entered the spacious kitchen of the mansion, where Eleanor was talking to the chef about the menu for the upcoming charity dinner. Seeing her daughter-in-law, Eleanor paused and dismissed the chef. "Good morning, Amanda." Her voice was polite but cold. "You're early today." "James flew to New York for a meeting with investors," Amanda replied, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "I thought I could help with the preparations for the charity dinner." Eleanor raised an eyebrow skeptically. "That's very kind of you, but I've been organizing this event for 20 years and know every detail." Amanda took a sip of coffee, trying to hide her disappointment. Every attempt she made to become a full-fledged member of the family was met with a polite but impenetrable barrier. Maybe I could do the flower arrangements? I studied floristry in college, she tried again. College in Chicago? Eleanor asked, looking closely at her daughter-in-law. Or was it in New York? Amanda felt a chill run down her spine. Chicago, of course. I never went to college in New York, only university. Eleanor smiled, but her eyes remained cold. Of course. How silly of me to get confused. You know, with age, my memory fails me. For example, yesterday I happened to find an old issue of the Washington Post with a photo from the opening of the Harrison Gallery, where you worked before you met James. Amanda tensed, but kept a neutral expression on her face. Really? I don't remember any photos in the newspapers. That's strange, because there was a group photo of the employees, but you weren't in it, even though you were supposedly already working there. Maybe I wasn't there that day, or I was standing somewhere out of frame, Amanda said, placing her cup on the table and trying not to let the tremor in her hands show. Maybe, Eleanor paused. Just a curious coincidence, like the fact that I recently spoke with Martha Jenkins, whose niece works at the Harrison Gallery. She mentioned that she had never heard of Amanda Pierce working there as an assistant curator. Amanda felt her heart pounding wildly in her chest. She must have joined after I left. She's been working there for 5 years, Eleanor continued to smile. You claimed you worked at Harrison's Gallery for 6 months before meeting James, right? Amanda realized she was being cornered. Every word, every fact of her fabricated biography was now being scrutinized. Eleanor made no direct accusations, but methodically dismantled her legend. I need to check my records, she said, standing up, feeling the need to leave. Maybe I'm confusing the names of the galleries. Of course, dear, Eleanor nodded. Memory is such an unreliable thing, isn't it? That evening, Amanda sat in her car in the parking lot of a shopping center, frantically dialing a number on the new prepaid phone she had bought an hour ago. Hello? The woman's voice on the other end was wary. Vicky, it's me, Amanda said quietly, looking around. My God, Nat, Amanda, are you crazy? We agreed not to contact each other, said Victoria Ellis, the only person from Amanda's past life with whom she maintained minimal contact, sounding frightened. I need your help. They're digging up dirt on me. My husband's family, they know something or suspect something. What exactly? My mother-in-law mentioned the gallery where I supposedly worked. She checked and found out I wasn't there. They might go to the agency. Victoria cursed softly. Listen carefully. If they really hired a good detective, sooner or later he'll find the connection between Amanda Pierce and Natalie West. You have to get ahead of them. How? Create another layer of protection. Confess to something minor to hide something bigger. Say that yes, you lied about working at the gallery because you were actually unemployed and ashamed of it. Or that you worked as a waitress and thought your wealthy family wouldn't approve. Give them something so they stop digging deeper. Amanda closed her eyes. The plan was reasonable, but dangerous. What if they already know more? Then you need a backup plan. Money, documents, a place to hide. I can't leave James. Amanda felt tears welling up in her eyes. I really love him, Vicky. Love is a luxury for people like us, Victoria replied harshly. Listen, I'll call my contacts and check if anyone has asked about Natalie West. You be careful, and throw that phone away after this call. After finishing the call, Amanda got out of the car and, looking around, threw the phone into a trash can. Returning to the car, she noticed a black sedan with tinted windows parked in the far corner of the parking lot. She had seen the same sedan in the morning when she left home, and in the afternoon when she had lunch in town. Amanda's heart sank with fear. She was being followed, and she even knew who was behind it. The question was how much they already knew and what they were going to do with that information. James returned from New York late in the evening and found his father in his study. Richard rarely invited his younger son in for serious conversations, preferring to discuss important matters with Michael, so James sensed something was wrong when he received the message. Father, you wanted to see me? Richard gestured for him to sit down. How did the meeting in New York go? Good. The Rockefellers are interested in a joint project. James was surprised that his father started with a business matter. Excellent, Richard nodded, then moved on to the real reason for the conversation. James, I want to talk about your wife. James tensed up. What about Amanda? Have you ever wondered why your mother and I are wary of her? Richard folded his arms on the table, looking his son straight in the eye. Because she's not from your circle, James replied with a hint of irritation. Because her family isn't on the Forbes 500 list. Because we feel like she's hiding something, Richard calmly countered. And, from the looks of it, we're right. James frowned. What are you talking about? Have you checked her background? I don't mean a quick Google search, a real background check. No, because I trust my wife. Richard sighed. Son, you're a brilliant financier. You never invest in a company without conducting a thorough audit. But you've entrusted your personal life to a woman you know practically nothing about. I know everything I need to know. James began to get angry. Really? Richard picked up the folder from the table. Do you know that the school in Chicago she supposedly graduated from has never heard of her? That the Harrison Gallery, where she supposedly worked, has no record of her employment? James turned pale. Have you been following her? I'm protecting my family, Richard said, handing the folder to his son. I'm not showing you everything we have, just what you need to know right now. Your wife is not who she claims to be. James reluctantly took the folder, but did not open it. Even if there are inconsistencies in her biography, that doesn't make her a bad person. Everyone deserves a second chance. A second chance is based on honesty, not new lies. Richard stood up, signaling that the conversation was over. Read the materials, think about it, then decide if you really know the woman you married. James returned home with the folder untouched. Amanda was already asleep in the bedroom, or pretending to be asleep. He stared at her face for a long time, peaceful and beautiful in the moonlight streaming through the window. Then he went to the fireplace, threw the folder into the fire, and watched as the flames consumed the papers. Whatever Amanda was hiding, he loved her just the way she was now. But for the first time in 2 years of married life, doubts began to eat away at his confidence in their future. The private dining room at Le Diplomat was plunged into semi-darkness. 4 people sat at the table, Richard and Eleanor Whitmore, their eldest son Michael, and David Clark. In front of them lay an impressive folder of documents and photographs. So, the final report. Clark tapped the folder with his finger. Your daughter-in-law's real name is Sophie Kingsley. She was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. Her parents died in a fire when she was 16. After that, she lived with her uncle, who, according to police reports, subjected her to physical and psychological abuse. Eleanor shuddered, her impenetrable face softening with compassion for a moment. At 18, she ran away to New York, Clark continued. First, she worked as a waitress, then as a dancer in a club. At 22, Sophie Kingsley disappeared, and Natalie West appeared, an elite escort for the Diamond Key Agency. How did she get Amanda Pierce's documents? Michael Whitmore asked, leafing through the materials. Through a client. One of her regular clients worked in social services and had access to databases. For a certain amount of money and services, he helped her create a new identity. Richard smiled grimly. Typical. She used sex to get what she wanted. In your sister-in-law's defense, Natalie West wasn't just an escort, Clark remarked. She specialized in accompanying clients to business meetings and cultural events. She was educated in art history, studied etiquette, politics, finance, everything that helped her fit into high society. Nevertheless, she slept with rich men for money, Richard retorted. And now one of those men is my son. The question is, Michael said slowly, is there a connection between her career as an escort and her marriage to James? Is it a coincidence or a planned operation? Clark opened another folder. I can't give a definitive answer here. On the one hand, Natalie West did have a client, Senator Prescott, your longtime opponent. She regularly accompanied him to events for 2 years. On the other hand, there is no direct evidence that her acquaintance with James was arranged by Prescott. But there is no evidence to the contrary either, Eleanor remarked. True. However, there is one interesting point. Clark took out a photograph. A week before she met James at the gallery, Natalie, already as Amanda Pierce, met this man. The photo showed an elderly man talking to Amanda in the park. That's Harold Stevens, Senator Prescott's assistant. Richard slammed his fist on the table. It's clear. It was a planned operation from the very beginning, to use sex and marriage to infiltrate our family, gain access to information, and undermine our position. Don't jump to conclusions. Clark raised his hand. Stevens is also a member of the Harrison Gallery's Board of Trustees. This meeting could have been related to her attempts to get a job there. Or it could be a cover for passing on instructions, Michael objected. Either way, we can't ignore the threat. A woman like that in our family is a time bomb. Richard nodded. What did she do after she got married? Any contact with Prescott or his people? Not directly, but she regularly visits a cafe near the Capitol, where she has crossed paths 3 times with Victoria Ellis, another former escort from the same agency and a close friend of Natalie Amanda. A courier for passing information, Richard concluded confidently. That's enough. We must act immediately. Amanda knew something was wrong as soon as she entered the living room of the Whitmore mansion. James had called her that afternoon and asked her to come over for a family talk. His voice sounded strange, tense and distant. Now she was standing in front of the entire Whitmore family. Richard, sitting in his favorite chair, looked like a judge ready to pass sentence. Eleanor kept a stony expression on her face. Michael stood by the window with his arms crossed over his chest, and James sat off to the side, avoiding her gaze. Sit down, Amanda, or should I call you Sophie, or maybe Natalie? Richard pointed to a chair in the center of the room. Amanda felt the blood drain from her face. James looked up sharply, staring at her with confusion and pain. I don't understand what you're talking about, she said, trying to sound confident, but inside she felt cold. Stop lying. Richard stood up and threw a folder in front of her. Sophie Kingsley from Cincinnati, an orphan who ran away from her abusive uncle. Natalie West, an elite prostitute for the rich and powerful. And finally, Amanda Pierce, the stolen identity of a dead girl and the fake wife of my son. Photos fell out of the folder. Amanda in a dark wig, entering a luxury hotel arm in arm with an older man. Amanda talking to a senator's aide. Amanda and Victoria in a cafe. James, she turned to her husband, seeking support. Is this true? His voice trembled with restrained emotion. Is anything you told me true? Amanda closed her eyes. Everything was falling apart. The house of cards she had so carefully built for her new life. My name really is Sophie Kingsley, she said quietly. Everything else is true too. But what I feel for you, James, is the truest thing in my life. Don't you dare manipulate my son, Richard raised his voice. We know about your connection to Senator Prescott. We know you were seeing his assistant before you accidentally met James. It was a planned operation. No, Amanda jumped up. Yes, I was an escort. Yes, Prescott was one of my clients. But our meeting with James was accidental. I fell in love with him for real. And that's why you continued to meet secretly with Victoria Ellis? To pass information through her? Michael interjected. Vicky is the only friend I have from my past. We just keep in touch. No passing on information. James stood up and walked over to her. His eyes were full of pain. Why didn't you tell me the truth? I would have understood. The truth? Amanda smiled bitterly. That I was an elite prostitute? That I slept with men who could be my fathers for money? That I ran away from my uncle who beat me every night when he came home drunk? Is that the truth you wanted to hear, James? A heavy silence hung in the room. All I wanted was to start a new life, she continued quietly. To become a different person, a better person. And I truly loved you. Eleanor, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke up. Even if your feelings are sincere, you built your life on a lie. How can we trust you now? It's not about trust, Richard interjected. It's about the safety of our family. We have evidence of your connection to Prescott. We can't take any chances. Evidence? Amanda exclaimed. Show me one piece of evidence that I was spying for Prescott. Just one. You regularly meet with Victoria Ellis, who has connections to Prescott's people, Michael said. Vicky works as a restaurant manager. She has nothing to do with politics. James rubbed his face with his hands. I don't know what to believe. Believe me. Amanda took his hands. Yes, I lied about my past, but not about us. Never about us. Enough of this melodrama. Richard approached them. Here's what's going to happen. You'll sign the divorce papers. You'll receive $2 million in compensation on condition of complete confidentiality and that you leave Washington. No contact with James or any other members of the Whitmore family. Father, James exclaimed. You can't decide this. I can and I am, Richard snapped. This woman is a threat to everything we've built. If she doesn't agree to our terms, we'll go to the police with a report of document fraud. Using a stolen identity is a federal crime. Amanda turned pale. Are you blackmailing me? We're protecting our family, Richard replied. You have 48 hours to make a decision. James looked at his father in horror. You can't do this. She's my wife. She's a liar and a fraud who took advantage of you, Michael interjected. You should thank your father for protecting you from further manipulation. Amanda turned to James. I need to talk to you. Alone. Eleanor tensed. I don't think that's a good idea. I have a right to talk to my husband, Amanda said firmly. James nodded. She's right. Leave us alone. After a moment's hesitation, Richard gestured for his wife and eldest son to leave. At the door, he turned back. Don't let her manipulate you again, James. When they were alone, Amanda sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. Everything they said about my past is true, she said quietly. But I was never a spy or anyone's agent. I just wanted to start a new life. James looked at her as if he were seeing her for the first time. Why didn't you tell me? I was afraid of losing you, she said, looking up at him with tear-filled eyes. I was afraid that if you found out who I was, you would stop seeing who I have become. I don't know who you've become. I don't even know your real name. Sophie, she whispered. But I was Amanda longer than I was Sophie. Amanda is the real me, the one who loves you. James knelt down beside her. I loved you. Maybe I still do. But how can I trust you now? Ask me anything. I'll answer honestly. Were you seeing Prescott's assistant before we met? Yes, but not because I was planning to meet you. He helped me get a job at the gallery. I really wanted to start an honest life. What about Prescott? Are you still in contact with him? No. I cut off all ties to my past life, except for Vicky. James stood up and walked over to the window. My father won't back down. He sees you as a threat. And you? Do you see me as a threat too? Her voice trembled. He was silent for a long time before turning to her. I see the woman I fell in love with, but I also see that she's not who I thought she was. I'm still the same, Amanda approached him. My past doesn't define me, but lies do. You lied to me for 2 years. She lowered her head. Yes, and I will regret it for the rest of my life. James gently took her chin, forcing her to look him in the eyes. What are you going to do? I won't accept their terms, Amanda said firmly. I won't go without a fight, not after everything we've built together. It's going to be tough. My father is pulling all his strings. I know, but if you're on my side, we have a chance. James looked at her for a long moment. I don't know whose side I'm on, Sophie, or Amanda's. I need time. She nodded, feeling her heart break. I understand. But know this. Whatever happens, I wasn't fighting against you or your family. I was fighting for us. That night, Amanda did not return to the Whitmore mansion. She checked into a small hotel on the outskirts of town and sat by the window, looking out at the lights of Washington. Her phone vibrated with messages. James was trying to reach her, but she wasn't ready to talk. Instead, she dialed Victoria's number. "They know everything," Amanda said as soon as her friend answered. "My real name, my past at the agency, even our meetings." "Damn it," Victoria cursed. "What are you going to do?" "Fight. I won't let them destroy everything I've built." "It's dangerous, Sophie. The Whitmores are not people you want to mess with." "I'm not Sophie anymore," Amanda said firmly, "and I won't go down without a fight." Hanging up the phone, she took a small leather notebook out of her bag. It contained names, phone numbers, details, information about clients that she had collected over the years as insurance, including compromising information about some of Richard Whitmore's business partners. If they had declared war on her, she would fight back with their own weapons. The room at the Hayes Hotel was plunged into semi-darkness. The only source of light was a table lamp illuminating the documents spread out on the table. Amanda Pierce Whitmore was looking through her leather notebook, writing down names and facts on separate sheets of paper. 3 soft knocks on the door made her start. She froze, listening. The knocking repeated, the same rhythm, but slightly more insistent. "Who's there?" she asked, without removing the chain. "I need to talk to you." The voice was muffled but recognizable. Amanda hesitated, then removed the chain and opened the door. What happened next happened with stunning speed. The figure burst into the room, pushing Amanda back into the room. Metal flashed in the dim light. "What are you doing?" Amanda gasped, retreating toward the window. "Let's talk. I can explain everything." "Explain?" The voice of the intruder trembled with rage. "After everything you've done?" "I haven't hurt anyone." Amanda tried to speak calmly. "We can find a solution. You're going to destroy this family. I can't let that happen." Amanda grabbed a vase from the table and threw it at her attacker. She missed. She rushed for the door but was intercepted. Strong arms grabbed her by the shoulders. "Please," Amanda whispered. The response was a sharp blow. Pain shot through her stomach, sharp and unexpected. Amanda saw the handle of a knife sticking out from under her ribs. Warm moisture spread across her blouse. "Why?" she gasped as she sank to the floor. The attacker leaned over her, saying something, but the words were already blurring. The last thing Amanda saw was a face contorted with a mixture of rage and regret. The victim is Amanda Pierce Whitmore, 29 years old. Time of death between 2 and 3 a.m. Cause of death, stab wound with damage to the liver and inferior vena cava, resulting in massive blood loss. Detective Sarah Morgan, a 38-year-old African-American with 15 years of experience in the homicide division, surveyed the crime scene. She glanced around the room, a broken vase, scattered papers, an overturned chair. Signs of a struggle are evident, she noted. The victim resisted. Who found the body? The maid, at 11:40 a.m., the officer replied. The woman didn't show up to check out, so the hotel manager gave permission to check the room. Sarah walked over to the table, where a leather notebook was visible among the papers. What else do we know about the victim? It was only yesterday that we found out that Amanda Pierce Whitmore is not her real name. Her real name is Sophie Kingsley, a former escort from New York. Where did that information come from? From the Whitmore family. They hired a private investigator who dug up her past. Yesterday there was a confrontation, after which the victim left the house and checked into this room. Sarah examined the body again. A single blow, but a precise one. The victim opened the door to the killer. There was no break-in. She knew her killer and let him in. The Whitmore family gathered at the police station. James, pale and shaken, arrived first. Richard and Eleanor arrived next, followed by Michael. They didn't talk to each other, each lost in their own thoughts. Sarah invited James into the interrogation room. "When was the last time you saw Amanda?" she asked. "Last night around 8 o'clock, at my parents' house. We had a family gathering." Tell me what happened. My father hired a private investigator. He found out that Amanda wasn't who she said she was. Her real name is Sophie Kingsley. She worked as an escort in New York. How did you react? I was shocked, but I still loved her. What happened after the revelation? My father wanted her out of our lives. He offered compensation in exchange for her disappearance. And what about Amanda? She refused. She said she would fight for our family. We talked alone, and I told her I needed time. After that, she left. Where were you between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning? In the guest house on the estate, alone. Richard's interrogation was completely different. The head of the family remained completely composed. Mr. Whitmore, was your relationship with your daughter-in-law strained? I didn't trust her, and I was right. She was a fraud. Did you threaten her with legal action? I offered her a way out of the situation that would be beneficial to everyone. It was a business plan. Where were you last night between 2 and 3 o'clock? At home with my wife. We take sleeping pills and go to bed at 10. Can anyone other than your wife confirm this? The estate security, surveillance cameras, an electronic security system that records when doors are opened. Do you have any idea who might have wanted your daughter-in-law dead? She had a dark past, perhaps a former client, or Senator Prescott. Your detective discovered their connection. Prescott may have feared she would reveal their relationship. Eleanor spoke quietly but clearly. I never approved of this marriage. There was something wrong with it from the start. But you didn't express open hostility? I was polite but cautious, and I gathered information. Was it you who insisted on hiring a detective? It was Richard's idea, but I supported it. I wanted to protect my son. Where were you last night? At home with my husband. We take sleeping pills, so I slept soundly. Are you aware of Amanda's notebook with compromising information about clients? Eleanor tensed. No. What kind of information? Names, dates, details. Some may concern your husband's business associates. That's unexpected, but not surprising, knowing her character. Michael was clearly nervous, though he tried to hide it. What was your relationship with Amanda? Formal. I always thought she was using my brother. Were you present during the confrontation? Yes. My father revealed her identity and laid out the terms of the divorce. How did she react? She denied being a spy. She insisted she loved James. Did you believe her? No. Women like her use love as a tool for manipulation. Where were you last night? Michael tensed. I had a meeting, not a business meeting. I'm involved with a woman, Christine Stone. We met at her apartment around midnight. I left there around 4 in the morning. What if Amanda had compromising information about your father's business partners? Michael paled. I didn't know about that. What exactly does it say? That's part of the investigation. I can't disclose the details. That evening, Sarah studied the interrogation records and evidence. On the board were photos of all the suspects and a timeline. What do we have? Captain Benson asked. 4 main suspects, each with a motive. James Whitmore, motive, feeling betrayed, no alibi. Richard Whitmore, motive, protecting his reputation and business, claims he was at home with his wife. Electronic security system confirms he didn't leave. Eleanor Whitmore, same motive, same alibi. Michael Whitmore, motive, protecting his brother and the family business, claims he was with his mistress. What about the notebook? Names of influential people, details of sexual preferences, business conversations. There are references to Richard's partners in questionable deals, but some pages are torn out, the most recent entries. Murder weapon? A premium kitchen knife, the brand used at the Whitmore estate. Only the victim's fingerprints are on the handle. Surveillance cameras? A car was recorded entering the hotel parking lot at 2:05 a.m. Due to the rain and tinted windows, the driver cannot be seen. It left at 2:38 a.m. The make matches the Whitmore's cars. So we have 4 suspects, each with a motive, and 3 without a solid alibi. Richard Whitmore has the strongest alibi, an electronic security system. but such systems can be bypassed. What's next? I want to check Michael's alibi, talk to Christine Stone, and look into James and Amanda's relationship. What about Senator Prescott? He's connected to the victim through her past and may have feared exposure, but there's no evidence he knew her whereabouts that night. Don't overlook any possibilities, the captain warned. This family is very influential. Sarah returned to her notes. She felt that the key to the mystery lay in Amanda's past and in the pages that had been torn from the notebook. Who killed Amanda Pierce Whitmore? An angry husband? A domineering father-in-law? A cold mother-in-law? A jealous brother-in-law? Or someone else whose secret she kept in her notebook? The answer was somewhere here, among the evidence and testimony, and Sarah Morgan was determined to find it. Detective Sarah Morgan carefully studied the hotel surveillance photos. 3 days of investigation had yielded few concrete results. Each of the suspects had a motive, but there was no decisive evidence to bring charges. The techs have enhanced the images, Lieutenant Diaz said as he entered the office. He placed a folder with new printouts in front of Sarah. Now you can see the license plate of the car spotted near the hotel on the night of the murder. Sarah quickly scanned the photos. DC 789 KLM. Whose car is it? It's registered to Whitmore Investments, a company car. Who in the family uses this car? Everyone has access to it, but Michael Whitmore usually uses it for business trips. Sarah leaned back in her chair, tapping her pencil thoughtfully on the table. What about Michael's alibi? Did Christine Stone confirm that he was with her? This is where it gets interesting. Diaz opened his notebook. Stone initially confirmed his version, but after further questioning, she broke down. She admitted that Michael had asked her to provide him with an alibi. In fact, he arrived at her place around midnight, stayed for about an hour, then left, and didn't return until 4:30 a.m. Just enough time to drive to the hotel, kill Amanda, and return. Sarah stood up and walked over to the evidence board. We have a witness who lied about an alibi and Michael's car at the hotel. But why him? James was emotionally vulnerable, Richard was more calculating and had more power in the family. Maybe the answer is in the notebook, Diaz suggested. The forensic team has finished analyzing it. Most of the entries relate to the period when Amanda was an escort. Names of clients, their preferences, compromising statements. But towards the end, there are entries about the Whitmore family. The ones about Michael are particularly interesting. Sarah took the folder with the transcripts. Among Amanda's notes were references to Michael's strange business meetings and his phone conversations, which she had overheard by accident. Several entries concerned River Hill Capital, a company with which Michael, according to him, was conducting a merger. She suspected Michael of some kind of fraud, Sarah muttered. Did you check this company? Yes. River Hill Capital is indeed in merger talks with the Whitmores, but there are suspicions that it's a front company owned by offshore entities in the Cayman Islands. And guess who one of the ultimate beneficiaries is? Senator Prescott? Sarah guessed. Exactly. The same Prescott who was Amanda's client when she was an escort. It looks like Michael is making a shady deal with his father's old enemy. Sarah thought for a moment. Betrayal. Michael is working with Prescott behind his father's back. Amanda somehow found out about it. And she was going to use that information to protect herself from the family, Diaz finished. We need a warrant for Michael Whitmore's arrest, Sarah said firmly, and gather all the evidence. I think we've found our killer. Michael Whitmore entered the conference room of the law firm, where he had an appointment with representatives of River Hill Capital. Instead of business partners, he was greeted by Sarah Morgan, accompanied by 2 officers. Michael Whitmore, you are under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Amanda Pierce Whitmore, Sarah signaled to the officers. Michael turned pale. This is ridiculous. I have an alibi. Christine Stone admitted that she lied at your request, Sarah replied. Your car was caught on surveillance cameras near the hotel at the time of the murder, and Amanda's notebook contained records of your secret meetings with Senator Prescott's representatives. That doesn't prove anything. Michael's voice trembled. We found the missing pages from the notebook. They were in your office in the safe. Sarah lied, watching the suspect's reaction. Michael lost his composure for a moment. That can't be. I burned them. Silence hung in the room. Michael realized his mistake and closed his eyes. At the police station, Michael Whitmore sat in the interrogation room, broken and defeated. Amanda's notebook lay in front of him. "Tell us what happened," Sarah suggested gently. "I didn't mean to kill her," Michael began after a long pause. "Things got out of control." "Why did you go to her hotel?" "After she left us, I started to worry. She knew too much about my dealings with River Hill. I accidentally mentioned the merger in front of her, thinking she wouldn't pay attention. But Amanda was smarter than we all thought." "Did she blackmail you?" "No, not directly. But when my father cornered her, I was afraid she would use that information. If my father found out that I was doing business with Prescott, he would have taken everything away from me." "What happened at the hotel?" Michael sighed. "I wanted to make a deal with her, offer my help in fighting my father in exchange for her silence. But when I arrived, she was already compiling a list of compromising information on all of us. I saw notes about my meetings, about phone calls she had overheard." "And you panicked?" "Yes. We argued. She said she was going to use this information not only against my father, but against me too, that James should know what kind of brother he had. I grabbed a knife." Michael paused, then continued more quietly. "It all happened so fast." "Why did you take the pages from the notebook?" "They contained details of my deals, names, dates, amounts. If the police had found them, there would have been questions, an investigation." Sarah nodded. "Where are those pages now?" "I burned them in the fireplace when I got home." The news of Michael Whitmore's arrest for the murder of his sister-in-law shocked Washington society. James, upon learning of his brother's betrayal, fell into a deep depression. Richard and Eleanor hired the best lawyers, but the evidence was irrefutable. Michael's confession, Christine Stone's testimony, and surveillance camera footage. The trial was quick. Michael Whitmore was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison. But the story did not end with the sentence. Amanda's notebook, although missing a few pages, contained enough information to arouse the interest of federal authorities. Investigations began into the Whitmores' questionable transactions, their ties to offshore companies, and tax evasion. Richard Whitmore, once an impregnable fortress of power and influence, was forced to step down as head of Whitmore Investments under pressure from the board of directors. The financial empire he had built over decades began to crumble. 6 months after Amanda's murder, James Whitmore sat in a small cafe across from Victoria Ellis, his wife's former friend. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," he said, nervously twirling his coffee cup. Victoria nodded. "What can I do for you, Mr. Whitmore?" "I want to know the truth, the whole truth about my wife." James looked up. "Who was she really?" Victoria looked at him for a long time, as if assessing whether he was worthy of hearing Sophie Kingsley's story. "She was a survivor," Victoria finally said. "Sophie didn't take the easy way out because she never had that luxury. Do you know what she did with the money she earned?" James shook his head. "She sent most of it to shelters for abused girls, anonymously, of course. She wanted them to have opportunities she never had." James swallowed the lump in his throat. "When she met you, she really fell in love," Victoria continued. "She told me that for the first time in her life, she felt she could be herself. Not Natalie, not Amanda, just herself. With you." "I still couldn't protect her," James said quietly. "You couldn't have known that your brother—" Victoria paused. "Don't blame yourself. Sophie always knew the risks of her new life. I found this in our things." James took a silver chain with a key pendant out of his pocket. "Was it important to her?" Victoria smiled sadly. "It's the key to her first apartment. Small, shabby, but hers. She always wore it as a reminder that she could build her own life." James clutched the key in his palm, and for the first time in 6 months, felt like he could breathe. Detective Sarah Morgan stood at Amanda Pierce Whitmore's grave, a simple stone engraved with the name Sophie Kingsley and the dates of her life. Sarah came from a family where generations had had to fight for their place in the sun. She understood the price of change better than most. "The Whitmore investigation is ongoing," she said quietly, as if sharing a secret. "Richard lost half his fortune. Eleanor set up a charity to help victims of domestic violence, probably her way of atoning for her guilt. James left the family business and is traveling the world, searching for himself." Sarah placed her hand on the gravestone. "Rest in peace, Sophie. You deserve it." Walking back to the car, Sarah thought about class barriers and the values of a society where a person's background and past often mean more than their present. About how difficult it is to change your destiny when society has already decided who you are. But Sophie Kingsley tried. And although that attempt cost her her life, she did not leave without a trace. Sometimes the most important changes begin with one person who dares to challenge the system.